If you were watching anime in 2015, you witnessed the rise of a juggernaut. One Punch Man wasn't just another seasonal hit, it was a cultural moment. Alongside Attack on Titan a few years earlier, it pulled anime into the mainstream in a way few series ever had. The hype was everywhere online, in the classroom, in memes, and for a while, One Punch Man felt unstoppable. Nearly 10 years later, the conversation around the series feels very different. So what happened? How did one of the most exciting anime debuts of all time end up here? This is the meteoric rise of One Punch Man. Chances are you're just like me, someone who watches anime and always has a dream of traveling to Japan one day. But I had two parcels that came in the other day that felt like I was opening Japan right at home. These are Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co snack boxes. Each month they'll come totally with a new theme. This month is all about Tsukimi, Japan's moon viewing festival. Tokyo Treat is all about fun, modern Japanese snacks, and get exclusive Kit Kat flavors, limited edition chips, noodles, and all the wild seasonal treats that you usually can't get outside of Japan. This month's box even has a Mont Blanc Kit Kat, themed to taste just like Japan's autumns. It's white chocolate, it's pretty good. And then Sakura Co, more traditional, artisan treats. Every box sports local makers across Japan, and it always comes with Japanese tea. This month sponsoring this lovely teacup. The camera really doesn't do it justice. It's actually like really quite nice. Irish mammies love their tea, so my mom is gonna kill for this. Both boxes come with a cultural booklet. All the cool cultural insights that come from these either fun or traditional snacks. My favorite from Sakura Co box, the cheese Charlie May. I didn't know there was cheese in them. And for the Sakura Co box, the honey butter puffs. I opened the pack and I literally couldn't stop until they were gone. So if you want to experience some of Japan's treats and delights in your own home, just go down to the link in the description or the link in the pinned comment and get €5 off your boxes today. And thanks to Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co for sponsoring this video. Thank you, truly. This monumental journey begins with one guy who was creating a webcomic for fun using nothing but a normal computer, using a mouse to draw a quick story that he thought would be interesting. And he posted it on his own personal website so that he could show it to people he thought might be interested. The site was hosted on Natosha, a Japanese webcomic site. This is something he did to simply share it with the people he knew, his friends and family. The chapters were insanely inconsistent though, and he would work on a page-to-page basis, uploading pages at a time rather than entire chapters. The art was nothing to marvel at. It was extremely rough and overall unappealing. However, trickles of people started to read his comic, most likely from other Japanese internet forums who had just so happened to stumble across it. Little did this man know what he had created. This one man's life was going to change forever. The name of the creator of the one comic is One, if that wasn't clear by the little reference I did before. And he was starting to feel fatigued with the amount of shonen stories out there. How these characters overcome stronger enemies, always seeming to come out on top for some unearned reason or power-up, consistently devastating any stakes these stories had. But instead of rant and complain about this in a letter to Shonen Jump, he decided to take action in a more creative route, creating his own webcomic, which by its very concept was a subversion and opposition of all those tropes he had grown so tired of. The very first chapter of the webcomic tells you everything you need to know about the tone and the setting of the entire story. A primordial evil created from all the pollution and harm that humans have done to the earth has manifested into a destructive being ready to reap its revenge on all of humanity for what they have done to Mother Nature. It gets blown into chunks by a guy who looks so disappointed. It's as if he just swatted away a fly. This was it. This was why it works. Saitama, much like a normal shonen protagonist, is insanely strong. It just so happens that this strength isn't a strength to him. He has grown so agonizingly bored with how easy things are that he started to question everything. Once stayed anonymous, only interacting with fans through short update notes. This mysterious vibe added intrigue. People were curious. Who could make such a compelling story with such minimal presentation? It was for 3 reasons that gained it so many loyal readers, despite all the things going against it. The lack of official publication, the amateur visuals, and the poor accessibility. Readers were able to look past it all because what lay within was so overwhelmingly refreshing and relatable to the average viewer. This passion must have been infectious because at its peak, the webcomic was pulling 20,000 views a day, and it had fan translations circulating by 2011. And by 2012, the webcomic had over 7.9 million hits on one's site. Not too bad for a comic spread only by word of mouth. Let's not gloss over those numbers though. They are crazy for an amateur Japanese webcomic artist, especially for the time. The industry standard for an indie series was maybe 10,000 total readers, not nearly close to one's 7.9 million. This success and overall quality of writing attracted more than just fans and readers. It also gained the attention of a very talented manga artist. We moved to Madagai City in the Madagai Prefecture to a man who just so happened to come across the webcomic. He fell in love with the story and the world, and this gave birth to an ambition. Because this man was Is Murata. But let's go back first. We don't know too much about one, because he's very secretive. The same cannot be said Murata. Murata was always destined to be a mangaka. From a young age, he was obsessed with drawing, and he cited the great Akira Toriyama, rest in peace, as his main inspiration. As early as elementary school, he was already submitting illustrations to contests held by Capcom for some of their Mega Man games. His drawings were chosen multiple times and featured in instruction manuals for Mega Man 4, 5, and 6, giving him the first hit of the drug that was creating manga. While in high school, he was constantly taking part in weekly Shonen Jump manga competitions, and his first major award was in 1995 when he won the Hop Step Award, a competition for up-and-coming manga artists. Even from a young age, his work exceeded that of his peers. However, anything he created himself had one key issue. He always struggled to create longer narratives on his own, a skill he wouldn't need when it came to his first big break, Eyeshield 21. He teamed up with Richiro Akane, a talented writer, and with that shortcoming covered, the manga had a powerful springboard to jump from. The manga ran from 2002 to 2009 in Weekly Shonen Jump and lasted 333 chapters, this making 37 volumes. Insane! It sold over 20 million copies and even received an anime adaptation. For this video, I read 30 chapters of Eyeshield 21, and I have to say, even the early chapters, Murata's artwork is spectacular. I've read a lot of sports anime, like Ippo, Croak No Basket, Haikyuu, but this was genuinely on a different level when it came to the artwork. It was dynamic, detailed, and fluid like water. However, despite his talent, after Eyeshield 21 ended, Murata struggled with what to do next. He had a prodigy level of skill when it came to his art, but still struggled with longer narratives, a skill he never learned when working on Eyeshield 21. And after the failure of Dawn 10 Prism Solar Car, what a title. It was a short-lived manga he was working on with another writer, but he was lost and hopeless, considering retirement, as he stated publicly. It was around this time, in 2011, where Murata found one's webcomic, and Murata's new ambition was born. He loved the story and saw an opportunity. Recognizing that one lacked the refined art style, he reached out and said, "Your story is amazing, but many readers may overlook it because of its art. I would love to redraw your series and bring it to a bigger audience." What makes this moment even more touching is that at the time, Murata was recovering from health problems. He said he was so inspired by one story that it genuinely gave him a reason to keep creating manga. One was cautious when considering Murata's offer. He was already working on Mob Psycho 100 with Shogakua, but Murata's skill as an artist was undeniable. Murata could take the webcomic to the mainstream, and maybe to the rest of the world. Because of this, he decided to strike a deal. One would provide the storyboards and rough draft of the generational story, and Murata would do his thing, making those storyboards into works of art. The plan was set, and the world wasn't ready for what came next. The first chapter of the One Punch Man remake was published online, and the reception was instant and completely overwhelmingly positive. Fans of the webcomic were amazed by the quality of the art. The story they loved was now portrayed at a quality they could have never imagined one's humble webcomic to ever be. Not only was the first volume of the remake insanely loyal to the webcomic, being in all ways a straight up upgrade from the original, this change in art took on the desired effect and drew new readers and captivated by one's refreshing story with one hell of a new gloss of paint. There was some turbulence on this rocket though. One of the issues the two ran into was preserving one's comedic timing while also amplifying the action. In regards to this, Murata said, "If I was to make it cool, I'll ruin one's humor. If I make it funny, I'll ruin the epic battles. My job is to amplify both at the same time." However, there was not many complaints, and by late 2012, the manga was pulling millions of views online. The manga was going international. Unofficial translations spread quickly around the world. Again, Murata and One would become even more famous, as did Murata's habit of going all out on the early chapters, spending an excessive amount of time, even when these deadlines loomed over him, adding insane levels of details on monsters and architecture. He would re-upload new revised versions of the manga, improving things like art pacing, proving that to him this was a labor of love. Let's hope that that doesn't have a side effect in the long term. One and Murata published the manga in Shueisha, and after the explosion of the manga, they began to explore the possibility of an anime adaptation. An anime adaptation of one of Jump's titles is usually initiated by the publisher, Shueisha in this case, not directly One or Murata. The publisher will look for studios and production committees. So Shueisha started putting together one such committee. They would be handling the publishing, Wits Media, Bandai Namco, and Lanthans would be covering music distribution, and the animation studio, the last piece of the puzzle, was Madhouse Productions. And leading the charge was Shingo Natsume, being brought in as a director. The planning for the anime began in early 2012. Natsume was relatively young, but he had already directed my favorite anime of all time, Space Dandy: It's a Small World. But because of the impact and the respect he gained from his peers, it was clear that he was a good choice, because he was the key to making this anime the giant it became. He personally reached out and invited outside help from studios other than Madhouse, a practice sort of unseen at the time. These were animators he personally trusted to make the project the best anime he or they could dream of being a part of to create. Animators were taken on as freelancers, and this freelance setup allowed Natsume to grant these talented animators their creative freedom, and this choice elevated the action scenes to cinematic levels. Unlike your typical tight anime schedule, the first season of One Punch Man didn't feel rushed, and that is thanks in part to the rest of the team. This high-level creative team ensured visual coherency, dynamic camera angles, and vibrant color palettes that resonated with Murata's original artwork. But one of these people, I think, shines a little brighter than the rest. Kubota managed to make animation-friendly designs for some of the most difficult characters in the story. Genos is a metallic robot that fucking glows and has insanely sharp details. The fact that none of that detail was lost is a genuine achievement. Even if the average viewer won't appreciate it, I do. Thank you, sir. Another element I feel often is overlooked is when it comes to the first anime's insane soundtrack and OST. The composer, Makoto Miyazaki, created a mix of orchestral builds to heavy rock paired with electric beats. And sound director, Jojo Hata, responsible for the sound effects and audio mixing. These two were responsible for the task that had no foundation to stem from. No webcomic or manga. One Punch Man had never been given sound before. This is genuinely such an impactful element of the anime. Every time I watch it, I'm surprised how much it impacts every moment of every experience. Music swells during fights, but cuts just at the right comedic moment, mirroring the narrative style itself. An example, Saitama casually realizing that it's grocery shopping sale day or whatever, and he one-shots the big thing that's killed everyone. The OP and OST are bombastic, but the ED is soft and melancholic. This reflects the show's dual nature: absurd comedy, existential melody, and Jam Project's involvement. There's no need to even say anything about the opening. It's so unbelievably powerful, and their legendary status as a group gave the opening itself the mainstream appeal. All of these people helped create something truly special. But One and Murata, although not directly involved with the animation itself, were consulted on story fidelity and were asked for approval for elements that needed to change due to the change in medium. If this sounds familiar, it's because it's almost exactly the approach that One and Murata took on when creating the manga itself. When it came to production, I couldn't find too much on how One felt or what impact he had as an individual. But once again, Murata was openly supportive of the anime in interviews and was happy to take a more hands-off approach than he usually would. But the dream team of animators from Madhouse followed Murata's manga almost panel to panel. So in truth, the anime was an adaptation of the manga and not the webcomic, which makes sense when it comes to the popularity and success, and most likely the longevity of the anime. But it is sad to see that the webcomic was seemingly left behind in this transition. Natsume's freelance dream team, Kubota's animation-friendly designs, Ikea's art direction, Hashimoto's color work, Fushihara's cinematography, and the Miyazaki and Hata's soundtrack combined to give One Punch Man Season 1 something that was incredibly rare in TV anime. This granted the anime an ability to break out of any one genre, becoming accessible to nearly every person on the planet. And this success was seen. Season 1 DVDs sold 2,000 to 5,000 units each week upon its release in Japan alone, peaking at 12,000 in a week across its run. Extremely strong numbers for a long-running shonen in Japan exclusively. Before the anime, the Murata remake of the manga had sold 2.2 million copies by late 2013. But after Season 1 aired, the sales skyrocketed. In 2016 alone, One Punch Man sold 3.9 million copies, ranking it as the 9th best-selling manga in Japan. Even though the anime was based on Murata's artwork, rather than the artwork from the webcomic, the anime's popularity retrospectively brought more attention to the rough, humble, and charming webcomic, much like this video is doing right now. It was around this time where I was in a classroom, overhearing people talk about this cartoon about this bald man. And after watching it, I fell in love. I dove right into the online hype. I started glazing the new hotness, and all I had experienced was hype to see where this everlasting momentum would lead. It's only up from here, baby. Hey, if you like more deep dive styles of video like this, please show your support by subscribing. My humble little channel is trying to hit 5K before the end of the year. So if you can make that happen for me, I will keep pumping out whatever the hell you want me to, within reason.